What's up, guys, and welcome to Gaming History 101's continuing buyer's guide on retro consoles. So today we're doing the TurboGrafx-16, as you can see here in my hands. Much more popular in Japan as the PC Engine, but it did come out here. And if you were lucky enough, like me, to snag one at Toys R Us for $50, wasn't a bad investment in the early 90s. Anyway, this is what the console looks like. This here in the back, black little attachment can be removed. It's where you access the power cord plus the expansion port if you ever were to get the CD add-on console. Right here is where the cards, known as Hue cards, go into place. And this little slot here is for your finger to kind of go up and pull them out. But most of the time I just stick my finger on top, slide them out. Anyway, right here is the controller port. We'll talk about that in a second. And the power switch, turning it on and off. There's not much to this console. It's pretty light. It's pretty easy. This here is the RF switch where you plug it in. I'll show that in a second. And the channel 3, channel 4 hookup. Now, you'll see the power cord. Looks like this. It's a box. It is a 10, let's see here. To be specific, it is a 10.5 volt, 730 milliamps, which is just under an amp. Obviously, those of you who know electronics, you may be able to find, with its common power port, something comparable. Just make sure it's 10.5 volts and preferably somewhere in the vicinity of 730 milliamps. Probably 750 milliamps is the best you're going to find. And then it just goes output to AC adapter. Anyway, this can be removed so that you can access the power console and various other things. So, when you are buying this console, you will receive the console. Another thing it's good to get is this here. Since I bought my console in the store, this is the RF adapter that comes with it. It is the official NEC TurboGrafx RF adapter. Like all other RF adapters, it's got the screw-on coax and the expansion port so you can daisy chain any other coax items you have. But like many other consoles in the 8-bit era, and yes, despite being a TurboGrafx-16, it is predominantly an 8-bit console. It just happens to have a 16-bit graphics card. You will get the single Rca Jack Rf Adapter. This is comparable to the Sega Master System and the Nintendo, and for me, I mostly use the same hookup for all three. So feel free to do that. That's not true for the power, but that is definitely true for the AV hookup. The other thing you should get with this console, especially because of its extremely high price, is this, the Turbo Pad. This is the official TurboGrafx pad. A couple of the big notable features of this: it looks a lot more like a Nintendo controller than, say, the Sega Master System controller, whereas the Sega Master System controller had button 1 here and button 2 here. Just like the Nintendo, button 2 or B is here, button 1 or A is here. And because it's the TurboGrafx, I'm guessing there was turbo always built into these controllers, so this is the extent of the turbo. This is non-existent, mild, and high-end. So if a Mega Man game were to ever come out on the TurboGrafx, it would be a lot easier with the turbo up to 11 and the other turbo down to nothing. The other interesting thing is the start button's called the run button, which kind of dates back to PC times, but then again, this was called the PC Engine in Japan, so that makes perfect sense. You will also notice that on the TurboGrafx-16, there is only one controller port, and there is no way to daisy chain them or anything on this controller. That is because this is predominantly a single-player console, which is a little weird for it. There's a couple of games that use more than one player. One of those of note is Bomberman 93, but I believe that's an import-only game. In that case, you can buy an expansion port that gives you up to 5 controllers. But for the most part, you're going to be playing this game console alone. Now, let's get to the games. This is what they look like in their cases. Again, this is a store-bought console. I've had it since I was 16. The case looks just like this. It looks like a CD case. This is the game that came packed in with the console Keith Courage in Alpha Zones. But it's not a CD. It looks very different when you actually open it up. The manual will be right here, and then the game looks kind of like a credit card, which is why they call them hue cards. If you're lucky enough, you'll get something as complete as this, where you get the whole quote-unquote CD case. The manual will be on the left here. In here is a plastic sleeve for the game, and then the game itself. Now, the way the hue cards worked is predominantly most of the memory is right here, and then the context for the game is right there. So, you know, you just kind of, I mean, it is. I'm just going to put this in because most people haven't seen a cartridge slot like this, but you just lock it in like that and turn the console on. This little switch here lets you know it's locked in. Then when you take them out, they want you to do it like this. I usually do it like that. But anyway. Now, to be clear, there is a contest on GamingHistory101.com for a bunch of retro games. Unfortunately, because my TurboGrafx-16 collection is somewhat limited and there is not one game in the whole collection I want to part with, I'm not going to be giving anything away. But this is what Keith Courage and Alpha Zones looks like. It was the launch game for the console. There's not many accessories for this console, and the games really kind of sell it. But for those that are interested, I also have this because there were a lot of arcade ports, many of which I own on the console, which is this. This is called the Turbo Stick. This is the official NEC arcade adapter. It gives you a little joystick. It's very firm, very good item. 2-1. Very closely resembles the NES Advantage, and obviously there are the turbo buttons. There's a slow button, which you toggle it on and off. It just basically presses run or pause many times in a row. And then instead of the switchers you saw at the top of the pad here, this one has kind of like analog sliders for the turbo. But anyway, so this is what the TurboGrafx-16 looks like. Due to its rarity, much like the Master System, it's going to have varied prices and varied availability nationwide. I would say if you can spend less than $50 on this console, you're doing very well. More than likely, you can expect to spend probably $60 to $100 for this console in this format that I've got here, complete with power cord, RF adapter, and controller. Obviously, the one mistake that many people make because they don't know any better is trying to get a TurboGrafx-16 with 2 controllers. Because the controllers are a little bit rare to find and they weren't really sold separately, and when they were, nobody really bought them. They usually sell for about $30 to $40 because the most common thing you'll ever find is a TurboGrafx-16 console without a controller. So to ask them for 2 controllers, which are completely useless, because it's just basically a replacement controller, you will pay more than $100 easy for a console with 2 controllers. Don't make this mistake. Get one good, reliable, confirmed working controller, and you're good to go. If you want to see write-ups on this and many others, go to GamingHistory101.com. On the home page, we also have information on our contest, which basically gives you a collection of retro games all in one, many of which appear on these videos. And don't buy a TurboGrafx-16 without checking out this buyer's guide. There's also a write-up on this, so it tells you a couple of things that the video doesn't. And check us out for a lot of retro review coverage. So that's it. Peace.